The boardroom fell silent. 37-year-old CEO Victor Ashford, founder of one of Chicago's fastest-growing technology companies, slowly looked around the polished conference table before fixing his cold eyes on the woman standing near the door. "You," he said with a dismissive laugh. "You're completely worthless." Every executive turned to look at the young assistant clutching a stack of files. Her name was Elena Brooks, 28 years old, with chestnut brown hair tied neatly into a low ponytail and calm hazel eyes. Elena had worked at Ashford Technologies for less than 6 months. She wasn't loud. She wasn't connected. She simply worked harder than anyone else. The room became painfully quiet. Victor stood, straightened his expensive navy suit, and walked toward her. "I've built a billion-dollar company," he said. "People like you should be grateful they're even allowed inside this building." Elena swallowed the lump in her throat. "I was only trying to deliver the financial reports you requested." Victor snatched the folder from her hands, barely glancing at it before tossing it onto the conference table. "You don't belong in meetings with real decision-makers." Several executives lowered their eyes. Nobody dared defend her. One manager quietly whispered, "Just apologize." But Elena didn't. Instead, she took a slow breath. "I've always believed that respect costs nothing." Victor smirked. "Respect is earned." "So, is character," Elena replied softly. For the first time, the room froze. Victor's face hardened. "You're fired." Gasps echoed through the boardroom. Security was called immediately. As Elena picked up her handbag, she looked around the room one last time. "I hope one day," she said calmly, "this company remembers that success isn't measured only by money." Then she walked away. Nobody followed her. Not a single person. Outside, cold rain poured over downtown Chicago. Elena stood beneath the building's entrance for a moment before pulling her coat tighter around herself. She had just lost the only stable job she'd found after caring for her late mother during a long illness. Most people would have cried. She didn't. She simply smiled sadly and whispered, "Mom, I tried." Across town, 72-year-old Harold Langston watched the security footage from his private office. Very few people knew Harold. Officially, he was retired. Unofficially, he owned nearly 40% of Ashford Technologies through a private investment firm. Victor believed Harold rarely paid attention to daily operations. He was wrong. Harold replayed Elena's final words several times. Then he pressed a button. Find out everything about that young woman. Meanwhile, Elena returned to the tiny apartment she had shared with her mother. Bills covered the kitchen table. Rent was overdue. The refrigerator contained little more than milk and bread. She quietly removed her office badge and placed it inside a drawer. Her phone rang. It was her younger brother, Mason Brooks. "Did everything go okay today?" Elena forced a cheerful voice. "Of course. You sound tired. Just a long meeting." She couldn't bring herself to tell him the truth. Mason was studying engineering on a scholarship. She had promised their mother that nothing would interrupt his education, even if it meant hiding her own struggles. After ending the call, Elena opened an old wooden box. Inside lay dozens of handwritten letters from her mother. One note caught her attention. It read, "Kindness always returns, sometimes from the most unexpected place." Tears finally rolled down her cheeks. The next morning, Harold Langston personally arrived at Elena's apartment. She opened the door in surprise. The elderly man smiled warmly. "Miss Brooks?" "Yes. My name is Harold Langston." She frowned politely. "I'm afraid we've never met." "No, Harold replied. But yesterday, I met your character." She looked confused. He explained everything. "I watched what happened." Elena immediately looked down. "I'm sorry you had to see that." "I'm not." She blinked. Harold continued, "I've spent 50 years building businesses. I've learned one lesson. Skills can be taught. Integrity cannot." He handed her a business card. "I'd like you to have lunch with me." Elena hesitated. "I don't have money for expensive restaurants." Harold laughed gently. "I'm inviting you." She finally nodded. "Okay." As Harold walked back toward his car, his assistant leaned closer. "Sir, are you sure about this?" Harold smiled without answering. Because there was one truth he hadn't revealed. 7 days earlier, he He had signed documents transferring his entire investment portfolio, including 40% of Ashford Technologies, to a single successor. The name on those confidential papers wasn't Victor Ashford. It was Elena Brooks. The following morning, Elena arrived at the private restaurant where Harold Langston had invited her. She expected a business discussion, but she never expected the truth he was about to reveal. Harold placed a folder on the table. Before we talk about your future, you need to know something about your past. Elena looked confused. Inside the folder were documents showing that her mother, Claire Brooks, had once been one of the most talented financial analysts in America. Years ago, Claire had helped Harold build his investment empire. Your mother was not just an ordinary employee, Harold explained. She was my most trusted partner. Elena stared at the papers. Why didn't she ever tell me? Because she walked away from wealth after seeing powerful people use money to hurt others. Harold paused. She wanted you to grow up knowing kindness mattered more than status. Elena felt tears forming. For years, she believed her mother left them with nothing. Now, she discovered her mother had left her something far greater. A legacy, Harold continued. Before your mother passed away, she asked me to protect you. She never wanted you to receive anything until you proved you had the heart to handle it. Elena looked shocked. Prove it. Yesterday you did. Meanwhile, inside Ashford Technologies, Victor Ashford was facing his worst week ever. The company's stock had dropped after investors discovered several poor decisions made by his leadership team. Executives who once praised him were suddenly questioning him. Victor blamed everyone except himself. Then Harold Langston entered the boardroom. The room went silent. Victor stood quickly. Harold, I was actually planning to call you. I know, Harold replied calmly. Victor smiled nervously. We need stability. I can fix everything. Harold placed a document on the table. No, Victor, you cannot. Victor opened the folder. His expression changed instantly. What is this? The transfer agreement. Victor's hands began shaking. No. Harold looked directly at him. 7 days ago, I transferred my shares to the person I believe can protect this company. Victor laughed nervously. Who? Some executive. Harold turned toward the door. Elena walked in. Victor froze. The same woman he had called worthless stood confidently in front of him. No, Victor Guisperth. Elena placed a folder on the table. Hello, Mr. Ashford. The entire boardroom watched in silence. Victor looked at Harold. You cannot be serious. I have never been more serious, Harold replied. The board members read the documents. Elena Brooks was now the majority shareholder and a new controlling owner of Ashford Technologies. Victor's face lost all color. But she was just my assistant. Elena looked at him calmly. That was your mistake. She continued. You measure my position, not my potential. Nobody spoke. For the first time, Victor understood what he had done. He had judged someone because of a job title. He had ignored loyalty. He had forgotten that companies were built by people, not just profits. Over the next few months, Elena transformed Ashford Technologies. She improved employee conditions, created mentorship programs, and rewarded hard work instead of connections. The employees who once stayed silent began to respect her. Even those who had watched Victor humiliate her admitted they had been wrong. 1 year later, Ashford Technologies reached record success. During the annual company celebration, Elena stood on stage. I want everyone here to remember one thing, she said. Never decide someone's value based on where they stand today. People can surprise you. In the audience, Harold smiled proudly. After the event, Victor approached Elena. He looked different, humble. I owe you an apology. Elena studied him quietly. I should have listened. I should have respected you. She nodded. Everyone deserves a chance to become better. Victor thanked her and walked away. Elena looked at the company building shining under the evening lights. A week earlier, she had walked out of that building feeling defeated. Now, she owned it. But the greatest victory was not the money. It was proving that kindness, courage, and character could rise above arrogance. The woman called worthless had become the leader everyone trusted. And the CEO who underestimated her learned the most important lesson of his life. True worth is never decided by someone else's opinion. Years later, Young entrepreneurs often visited Elena to learn her story. She never talked about revenge or proving people wrong. Instead, she spoke about patience, resilience, and believing in yourself when nobody else does. Her journey became a reminder across the business world that a person's beginning does not determine their ending. The quiet assistant from Chicago became a symbol of hope, showing millions that dignity and determination could open doors that money alone could never unlock. Her story continued inspiring people everywhere to choose compassion over judgment and courage over fear daily.